How's it going, boys? Today we're going to talk about bad aim and how to improve it. Now there's a lot of advice out there, there's a lot of different videos. I'm going to cover this all in one, so every time someone asks me, I just send them this. You can also do the same, of what makes it bad aim and how do we improve it. My name's SlayerKey. I've worked with over 1,000 players, helping them get 510,000 rating in total. I've played this game since beta, started off bronze 2, I'm Mortal 3 now. Let's get into how do we improve this aim. So bad aim is usually just the result of bad aim habits. It doesn't mean your mechanical aim is lacking. So let me go ahead. This is my free guide, which you can find. I'm just going to go ahead and go to the aim section down here. Very first thing is mechanical aim. Now this is something we're all very much familiar with. This is what the aim trainers have us practice. This is micro adjustments. So a target comes on the screen, just a slight adjustment to the head, as you can see in this. The next is flicks. Flicks are more large micro adjustments. They're basically these big flicks, so guys across your screen, you got to flick over to them. And then last one's tracking. You don't use this a lot, but run and gun. There's different ways you can train this. I include them here. One's over flicking here, one's just doing clock flicks here. It explains it. And it's important, but what I would argue is even more important is passive aim. Now, passive aim is what you love to hear about all the time. It's crosshair placement. It is basically determining who is more ready to get the kill. If we look at this example, whose crosshair is more ready for the kill, who's more ready to get the kill, it's always going to be the guy on the right. He's going to win this fight more times out of 10. So this is where a lot of players tend to struggle. And passive aim is crosshair placement. So just when you peek into an area, where's your crosshair place? Is it ready for enemies? Is it not? So when you do peek them, do you have to move your crosshair? There's really good examples of this, which I'll show you in just a second. But crosshair placement is basically just head level, of course, and it's actually threat angle. A lot of people forget about threat angle, and this is just where do you need to check? Where do you need to place your crosshair? This is like why we do crosshair placement. So there's an example here of a player jumping, seeing a guy running over, and then checking way too far into an angle. He didn't consider the threats properly, so he got laid out like a fish. The biggest ways to know this is through sound. Sound is like the #1 way. Minimap helps quite a bit too, but really it's just sound. You need to be really aware of the sound cues around you, when people stop, when people are moving, gunshots you hear, stuff like that helps a lot. But where most players struggle is actually movement. Movement's a really underrated aspect of fighting. A lot of people tend to fight with their crouch key, which is a no bueno, of course. Just unbind your crouch. I've had it unbound for 3 months. Movement, you can actually just aim with your movement. I talked about it previously here. It's a really easy way to not have to move your crosshair as well. And I'll show you an example at the end of this video of what that looks like in game. But you don't have to move your crosshair to kill enemies sometimes, or just a little bit. So there's some training here for that. But this is kind of what you're working towards with your movement. Just a back and forth 2-shot strafe. This is what you use in like 80% of fights, 90% of fights. It works pretty dang well. Now, I want to show you guys this clip, and just to exemplify how much mechanical aim do we really need in fights. So remember, mechanical aim is basically like micro adjustments, so slight flicks, which are bigger, and then tracking, which you barely use. You barely use tracking in game. So let's watch my crosshair, watch these fights, watch where it's placed. Just ask yourself, how much do I actually have to need to move my mouse for a lot of these kills? And this will help us better identify what we need to practice to improve our aim. This is just a regular deathmatch with the Vandal. Hope you like the little TIE Fighter crosshair. I kind of miss it. I might switch back to it. We hold wider here because we hear this guy running. Before we continue, let me remind you about the free resources available in our Discord, as well as our shop that includes agent cheat sheets, a comprehensive improvement guide, as well as your own custom warm-up training routine, and a deathmatch analysis. If this interests you, visit slayerkey.com/support. Now back to your regularly scheduled program. So how much did we really need to move our crosshair? The answer is not much. So 90% of fights are going to be micro adjustment and crosshair placement. 90% of fights, I would say. You don't need to work on anything else. You really don't. If you're struggling in fights, I would focus on doing micro adjustment training. You could do some flicks training, you can do a little tracking training, but really emphasize micro adjustments, really emphasize having good crosshair placement. I'm gonna go ahead and show you a pro player. This is C9 Zeppa, just playing a regular split deathmatch casually, not even looking at the screen right now because he's just gonna be talking to chat. I want to pay attention to just where his crosshair is. And one thing I want to pay attention to is this. This is what I like to call like the first point of engagement. So how ready is this player to kill this player? Right now, not so much. He's looking heaven, he's there. Does he win the fight? Sure. It's Zeppa. I don't want you guys to rely on this. So first point of engagement, he peeks here, right next to the head, has to make a slight flick. Same thing here, another slight flick. So crosshair placement doesn't have to be perfect. This is a really good example of why. He peeks into here, already pre-aiming this spot. How close is his crosshair? Pretty dang close. He didn't even move his mouse there. So if you think you need all these crazy things, let's go back and watch that Ash real quick. That's another good one. First point of engagement, very, very close. One thing that can be helpful that I probably should add to the guide is notice how he hugs the corner of this wall here. He hugs the corner of the wall with this crosshair. This helps a lot just to make sure your crosshair is not on dead space, basically. The only place he can be peeked from is to the side of this wall right now. And so he's really prioritizing that space. Not gonna be perfect. Pretty much same thing. Every time he just peeks into a spot, you're gonna notice his crosshair's already there. Instinctively, he cannot help it. He always looks at the next threat. Instinctively, he cannot help it. Notice how little his crosshair is often on any sort of floor, any sort of dead space, which is just like walls. Right, he's on a wall right here, and he's gonna hug it to peek the first spot, hug it to peek the next spot. It's very, very good. The next thing is his head level. His head level is really good. This takes a lot of time. You need more map knowledge because, like, for example, you peek that raise there. That's a different elevation. It's hard. On different elevations, it's hard to know exactly where to look. You just kind of gotta trust your instincts, or you gotta keep throwing your head against the wall until it works. Because different elevations just have way different head heights. So what makes bad aim is not focusing on these things, thinking we need an insane amount of aim trainer practice. I'm not saying you don't need to know how to micro adjust or flick. I'm saying focus on those things alone. Don't get super distracted with other things. And I'm not saying you can't practice it in game either. There's great examples here. So I would do the clock flick practice, which is this one. I would do the flick practice. This one's really simple. I really enjoy it. And then I would do crosshair placement practice. Not this beginner one, this advanced one I would recommend for most players, unless you're newer to crosshair placement. Advanced players, and this is just a crosshair placement video that I have on my channel that just says crosshair like every 10 seconds. And then it tells you exact instructions and what to do. Then next up is pre-aiming. This one's more complicated. You don't need this for a lot of situations, but like common aim angles, for example, this is the one time you're allowed to like glue your crosshair through the wall. Same with like a player holding you. You're kind of like heavy pre-aiming through the wall. The only time you don't really pre-aim is when you see a player moving, like the example we saw earlier. So the best thing for this is actually to diffuse the spike mode. It's really good in the range. You can use the Guardian alone, and you just play it 3 times for bot spawns, and then 5 times just pre-aiming each spawn you know. So I know this guy spawns in this corner, so I just pre-aim it. Makes it easy to kill. Okay, and if you haven't already, get very comfortable with this fighting style here. The 5 to 30 meter. Just a strafe 2 burst. If you don't know how to strafe, check out the dead zoning here. It's all outlined. I want to see people be way better in fights. Right now people are rushing their shots a lot. Right now people are not comfortable in the different ranges. And it's very disruptive. It's not good for your game. It's not good for your performance. And this is usually the advice I give most players. There is a lot of different things we covered. But I would really suggest you do what I'm doing now and just watching a deathmatch VOD of yourself, ideally, and seeing this first point of engagement. Where's your crosshair? Is your crosshair in a good spot? Maybe you don't focus on crosshair placement. Maybe you have trouble with micro adjustments. Maybe you want to try using your movement to aim. Really experiment and think about what's best for you. Don't ever not do this and just be like, yeah, flicks are my problem. I have trouble with the moving targets. Don't ever do this. Watch the VOD, see what it is. Most of the times the problems we think we have when we're here and we're playing the game are wrong. We're very biased. So we need to record it, watch it back, and see what it is. Anyways, that's it from your boy. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz, and feel free to check out my free guide and Discord down in the description. Have a good one. Bye bye.